I'm Emma, 27 years old, and after years of pushing myself to the limit, I finally got the recognition I deserved. The best part wasn't just the new title, it was the significantly bigger paycheck that came with it. After the excitement of the promotion settled, I made a decision I'd been dreaming about for years. I was going to buy myself a new car, and not just any car, I wanted something special. I spent weeks researching different models, comparing features, and crunching numbers to make sure I could afford the payments. Finally, last Thursday, I walked into the Mercedes dealership. My heart was racing as I looked at all the gleaming new models. The salesman, Mike, was actually pretty helpful and didn't talk down to me like some car salesmen do to women. The moment I sat behind the wheel, I knew this was it. The leather seats, the smooth handling, the quiet purr of the engine, everything felt perfect. 2 hours later, I was driving my dream car off the lot, still hardly believing it was mine. The first few days with my new car were pure joy. Every time I walked up to it in the parking lot at work, I couldn't help smiling. My colleagues were impressed, and honestly, I was proud. I'd earned this, every penny of it. Then came Saturday dinner at my parents' house. As I pulled into the driveway, my younger sister Sarah was the first one out the door. She's 20, still in college, and has always been the baby of the family. Her jaw dropped when she saw the car. She ran around the Mercedes, practically drooling over it. Mom and Dad came out next, and their reactions were less enthusiastic. Mom's eyes widened, and Dad's forehead creased in that way it always does when he's about to lecture me about something. We went inside for dinner, but Sarah couldn't stop talking about the car. "Emma, you have to let me drive it. Just once. My friends would absolutely die if they saw me in that car." "No, Sarah. It's brand new, and I'm not comfortable with anyone else driving it yet." "But I'm a good driver," she whined. "Mom, Dad, tell her she's being selfish." "Emma," Dad said in his disappointed voice, "your sister just wants to borrow it for a little while. Would it kill you to share?" I said no, I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's my car, and I get to decide who drives it." Sarah's face turned red, then practically green with anger. She shoved her chair back from the table with a screech and stormed out of the room. I could hear her stomping up the stairs and slamming her bedroom door. "I can't believe how selfish you're being," Mom said, shaking her head. "We raised you better than this." I looked down at my barely touched dinner, suddenly not hungry anymore. Without saying another word, I quickly finished what was on my plate, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. Neither of my parents tried to stop me as I left. As I drove home that night, memories started flooding back. The familiar ache in my chest returned, the one I'd felt countless times growing up as Sarah's older sister. Nothing had changed. After all these years, I was still the bad guy for not giving Sarah exactly what she wanted. From day one, Sarah could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. If she wanted a toy, they'd buy it before she could even finish pointing at it. If she cried, the whole house went into crisis mode until she stopped. Meanwhile, I was always told to be more mature or set a good example. A particular memory hit me as I stopped at a red light. I was 16, dealing with the embarrassment of having to use Dad's old hand-me-down smartphone, the one with the cracked screen and battery that died every few hours. Sarah, at 9, had just gotten the latest iPhone because all her friends had one. "Mom," I'd said during dinner one night, "my phone barely works anymore. Could I maybe get a new one too?" Mom had exchanged looks with Dad before answering, "Emma, phones are expensive. If you want a new one, maybe you should think about getting a part-time job. You're old enough now." The very next week, I started working at the local grocery store after school. The manager, Mrs. Thompson, took pity on me and gave me as many hours as she legally could. I still remember the pride mixed with bitterness when I finally bought myself a decent phone 3 months later. Meanwhile, Sarah was showing off her second new phone of the year. Her first one had mysteriously disappeared during a pool party, and our parents immediately replaced it. The truth was, I didn't have a choice but to be independent. Every time I needed something, the the answer was always the same: figure it out yourself. Meanwhile, Sarah grew up expecting everything to be handed to her on a silver platter. I pulled into my apartment complex's parking garage, carefully maneuvering my new car into my spot. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was at 27, finally able to buy myself nice things, and my family was still treating me like I was selfish for not sharing them with Sarah. 2 weeks passed relatively peacefully after the dinner incident. I was at home one Saturday afternoon, catching up on some work emails, when my doorbell rang. To my surprise, Sarah was standing there with an unusually sweet smile on her face. "Hey, sis," she chirped, bouncing on her toes. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. Could I maybe take a few pictures with your car? Just for Instagram? Pretty please?" I sighed and grabbed my car keys. "Fine. But just photos." What I thought would be a quick photo turned into a full-blown photo shoot. Sarah had me take pictures of her from every possible angle, leaning against the car, sitting on the hood, which nearly gave me a heart attack, and even posing in the driver's seat with the door open. Finally, after what felt like hours, she declared she had enough material. She was already typing on her phone before she even said goodbye, probably posting the photos right away. That evening, curiosity got the better of me, and I checked her Instagram. Sure enough, there was a whole series of professional-looking shots of her with my Mercedes. The comments section was buzzing. "Oh my god girl, is this yours? When are you taking me for a ride in this beauty? What? Since when do you have a Mercedes?" Sarah's responses were deliberately vague: "Everything in its time, and good things come to those who wait, and you'll see soon enough." I rolled my eyes and closed the app. Classic Sarah, trying to make her friends think she had something she didn't. It was childish, but ultimately harmless. Or so I thought. A week later, I was packing for a business trip to Arizona. We had a major client presentation, and I was flying out with my assistant, Tom. I called Mom to let her know I'd be away for a few days, a habit I'd never quite broken. The first 2 days of the trip went well. We'd just finished our presentation and were heading back to the hotel when my phone rang. It was Mom again. I answered, expecting the usual check-in call. "Emma?" Her voice was tense. "There's been an accident." My heart stopped. "What happened? Is everyone okay?" "Sarah," Mom hesitated. "Sarah's fine, but your car, it didn't survive the crash." The words took a moment to register. "My car? What do you mean my car? How could Sarah crash my car?" There was another pause, longer this time. "Emma, that's not important right now. What's important is that Sarah needs your help. They're holding her for drunk driving." And apparently, she resisted arrest. I felt like I was in some kind of twisted nightmare. She stole my car, got drunk, crashed it, and then fought with the police? "Now, Emma," Mom jumped in, her voice taking on that familiar pleading tone, "don't be dramatic. She needs you to come home and help sort this out. She's scared and..." I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it. Messages started pouring in immediately: Mom, Dad, even some relatives, but I couldn't look at them. If I talked to any of them right now, I would say things that couldn't be taken back. I took a few deep breaths to steady myself before calling Tom, my assistant, who was in his hotel room working on the presentation follow-ups. I gave him a quick rundown of the essential details and the remaining tasks. Tom, bless him, didn't even hesitate. "I've got it covered. Go take care of your family situation." Next came the harder call to my boss, Richard. I explained everything: the car theft, the accident, the arrest. To my relief, he was understanding. "Family emergencies take priority," he said. "Tom's more than capable of handling things there. Book the next flight home and keep me posted." 3 hours later, I was on a plane back to town, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. The flight felt endless, even though it was only a few hours. When I finally got to my apartment building, all I wanted was a shower and a moment to think. But the universe had other plans. The moment I opened my apartment door, the smell hit me, stale beer and cigarettes. My stomach dropped as I flipped on the lights. The place was trashed. Empty bottles littered every surface, some tipped over on my cream carpet, leaving dark stains. Cigarette butts were scattered across my coffee table, burn marks dotting the wood. Half-eaten snacks and pizza boxes were strewn everywhere. Then it hit me, the spare key. Mom had insisted on keeping one for emergencies when I first moved in. Sarah must have taken it to throw a party while she had my car. I was still standing in the middle of my ruined living room when my phone buzzed. A text from Mom, "We know you're back. Come to the house now." Fury propelled me through the 15-minute drive to my parents' house. They were waiting on the porch, both looking like they'd aged years in the past day. But any sympathy I might have felt evaporated when they started in on me the moment I stepped out of my Uber. "How dare you hang up on us?" Mom shrieked. "We'd been trying to reach you for hours." I cut them off mid-rant. "Where is she?" They exchanged glances. Mom's voice dropped. "She's at the police station. They're holding her until someone posts bail." "I'm going there," I said flatly, pulling out my phone to call another taxi. "We're coming with you," Dad announced. It wasn't a request. The ride to the police station was tense. I sat in the front seat next to the driver, while my parents whispered furiously in the back. I tried to tune them out, but fragments of their conversation kept reaching me. "We need to talk to the dean. Her scholarship. Maybe if we explain it was just a mistake. She can't have this on her record." They were already plotting how to get Sarah out of this mess, how to protect her from the consequences of her actions. Just like they'd always done. Some things never change, I thought as we walked into the station. Sarah messes up, and everyone else is expected to fix it for her. The fluorescent lights of the police station made everything look harsh and unreal. An officer led us through to the holding cells, and there was Sarah, still wearing her party clothes from the night before, mascara streaked down her face. The moment she saw me, she gripped the cell bars and started screaming. "Emma! Finally! This is all your fault. You and your stupid car got me into this mess. Get me out of here right now." I stood there, stunned by her audacity. A police officer approached us, Officer Martinez, according to his nameplate. He had the weary look of someone who'd seen this kind of family drama too many times before. "You must be Emma Thompson," he said, checking his notepad. "The actual Emma." "What do you mean, the actual Emma?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly what he meant. Officer Martinez sighed. "Well, around 2 a.m. this morning, we received multiple calls about a Mercedes being driven erratically on Palmer Street. When our officers arrived, they found the car wrapped around a telephone pole. Your sister and 3 friends were there, all clearly intoxicated." He flipped a page in his notebook. According to witnesses, they'd been racing down residential streets, music blasting, hanging out the windows. When we tried to arrest her, she claimed she was Emma Thompson and that it was her car. She became quite aggressive with the officers. I turned to her, my voice shaking with anger. "Why did you tell them you were me?" Sarah rolled her eyes and shrugged, like this was all some minor inconvenience. "Well, it was your car. You should be the one dealing with this mess." "Dealing with," I started, but Mom cut me off. "Emma, honey," she said in that tone that always meant I was about to be guilted into something. "What's important now is getting Sarah out of here. We need you to pay her bail." Officer Martinez cleared his throat. "There's also the matter of the damaged property and the medical bills," Dad jumped in. "The other girl, Katie, she's in the hospital. Her parents are threatening to sue." "They won't sue if we handle this quickly," Mom added urgently. "Emma, you need to pay for Katie's medical expenses. We can't let this go to court." The officer nodded grimly. "Yes, Miss Thompson. The Andersons, Katie's parents, have already filed a personal injury claim. Katie has a broken collarbone and a severe concussion. They're quite upset, understandably. So what's the total? I asked, feeling numb. Mom started counting on her fingers. Well, there's the bail, which is set at $5,000. Then the damage to the telephone pole, that's probably another few thousand. Katie's medical bills, and of course, we'll need a good lawyer. I looked at my family, Mom wringing her hands, Dad with his stern disapproving face, and Sarah sniffling in her cell, and something inside me finally snapped. No, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'm not paying anything. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah's mouth dropped open in shock. What do you mean, no? Mom's voice rose to that shrill pitch that usually made me back down. Not anymore. You can't do this to me. Sarah grabbed the cell bars, her knuckles turning white. You can't leave me in here. Dad stepped forward, his face turning that dangerous shade of red I remembered from childhood. Emma, your sister needs your help. This is not up for discussion. You're right, it's not up for discussion, I said, standing straighter. Sarah stole my car. She broke into my apartment, took my car without permission, got drunk, and crashed it. She endangered her friends' lives. And then, to top it all off, she tried to frame me for everything by giving my name to the police. But it was your car, Sarah shrieked. You're responsible. Responsible? I cut her off, my voice rising. Let me tell you about responsibility, Sarah. I'm the registered owner of that car. The insurance is in my name. But guess what? You're not on my insurance policy. Do you have any idea what that means? Mom tried to interrupt, but I kept going. It means the insurance company won't pay a cent for the damage. Not for the car, not for the telephone pole, not for Katie's medical bills. And because you gave them my name, I might even have legal problems now. Emma, Dad's voice held a warning tone, you need to think about what's best for this family. Oh, like you thought about what was best for me when you gave Sarah my spare key? When you let her throw parties in my apartment? When you always took her side, no matter what she did wrong? Sarah was full on crying now, those big theatrical sobs she'd perfected since childhood. You're so mean. You've always been jealous of me. I turned to Officer Martinez, who had been watching this whole scene unfold. Officer, I want to file a report for theft and breaking and entering. My sister stole my car. She illegally entered my apartment using a spare key she took without permission, and she stole my car keys. I want to press charges. Sarah's sobs turned to screams. You can't do this to me. Mom, Dad. Don't let her do this. My parents exploded. Mom started wailing about how I was destroying the family, while Dad took a threatening step toward me, his face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little, he started, raising his hand, but Officer Martinez quickly stepped between us. Sir, the officer's voice was firm, I'm going to need you to step back and calm down, or you'll be joining your younger daughter in a cell. 2 other officers had appeared, apparently drawn by the commotion. Dad backed off, but his eyes were burning with fury. Officer Martinez, I said, my voice shaking slightly but determined, I'd like to make that official statement about the theft now. Officer Martinez led me to his office. He pulled out a form and slid it across to me. My hand shook slightly as I began writing. I detailed everything, how Sarah had accessed my apartment using a stolen spare key, how she'd taken my car keys without permission, how she'd driven drunk and crashed my car, injured her friend, and then tried to pin everything on me by giving my name to the police. When I finally left the police station, the parking lot was empty, my parents' car was gone. A mix of relief and something else, something heavier, settled in my chest. They'd left without even trying to talk to me again. Somehow, that said everything. I called an Uber, constantly checking over my shoulder during the ride home. Part of me expected to see my parents' car following me, or to find them waiting outside my apartment building. But the street was quiet when I arrived. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability. My apartment didn't feel safe anymore, not when I knew Sarah had been able to walk right in whenever she wanted. I called my landlady, Angela, hoping she'd understand. "Angela? I'm so sorry to bother you this late, but I have a serious situation." I explained everything: the stolen key, the party, the car theft. "Would it be possible to change the locks?" "I'll pay for everything, of course." "Oh honey, of course." Angela's voice was warm with concern. "I'll call Joe right now, he's our regular locksmith. He can be there within the hour." True to her word, Joe arrived quickly and changed all the locks. I watched him work, feeling some of my anxiety ease with each turn of his tools. When he finished, he handed me the only copies of the new keys. Next, I went down to talk to Marcus, our building's concierge. He'd always been friendly to me, and now his face darkened with concern as I explained the situation. "I need to make sure my parents and sister aren't allowed into the building," I said. "Under any circumstances." I barely slept that night, jumping at every sound outside my window. When my phone rang early the next morning, I was already awake. It was my insurance company. "Ms. Thompson," the agent's voice was professional, but cold. "I'm calling about the incident with your Mercedes. According to the police report, the driver was intoxicated and not listed on your policy." "That's right," I said. "My sister stole my car. I filed charges." Nevertheless, she continued, "Due to the circumstances, the DUI, the injury to a passenger, the property damage, I regret to inform you that we won't be able to cover any of the damages. Furthermore, this incident will affect your insurance rating going forward." I hung up and sat on my couch, anger building inside me all over again. Sarah hadn't just destroyed my car, she'd created a domino effect of problems that would follow me for years. My insurance rates would skyrocket if I could get coverage at all. There might be legal issues, because she'd used my identity. And now Katie's parents might sue, thinking I was somehow responsible, because it was my car. I knew I had to call Katie's parents. The Andersons had known me since high school. Katie and I had taken dance classes together, and I'd even babysat her a few times before college. They deserved to hear the truth from me directly. My hands trembled as I dialed Mrs. Anderson's number. She answered on the second ring. "Mrs. Anderson, I need to tell you everything that happened," I said, and then I did. I told her about Sarah stealing my car, about the party in my apartment where they'd all been drinking, including Katie, and about how Sarah had tried to pin everything on me. When I finished, I heard Mr. Anderson sigh heavily in the background. They had me on speaker. "Emma," he said, "we're not going to pursue any legal action against you. But we will be suing your sister. Katie's medical bills are substantial, and her recovery will take months." 2 days later, I heard through my aunt that my parents had borrowed money from various family members to bail Sarah out. Then I saw my mother's Facebook post. "A daughter's true colors show in times of crisis. When your own sister refuses to help you in your darkest hour, it breaks a mother's heart. Family should always come first." I couldn't let that stand. I wrote my own post, laying out the entire truth: the theft, the drunk driving, the identity fraud, everything. But instead of support, I got messages from relatives telling me I was cruel for exposing family business and abandoning my sister when she needed me. The calls started coming nonstop after that. First my parents, then Sarah, all demanding I help pay for a lawyer. When I blocked their numbers, they switched to messaging apps. When I blocked those, they started showing up at my apartment. Thank God for Marcus, my building's concierge. He turned them away every time, but I knew I couldn't live like this forever. I found a new apartment across town, in a secure building with good security. I didn't tell anyone the address, not even my aunt, who'd been the only family member somewhat sympathetic to my side. At work, I spoke with our head of security. "I hate to ask this," I said, "but my family members might try to show up here. They're not to be allowed in under any circumstances." Weeks passed. Through the family grapevine, I heard that my parents had borrowed even more money for Sarah's legal fees. The court case with the Andersons went exactly as expected. Sarah was ordered to pay substantial damages for Katie's medical bills and emotional distress. I also heard that Sarah had been expelled from college. Apparently, a DUI and assault on a police officer violated their student conduct code. Who would have thought? My mother posted another dramatic message online about how I'd destroyed my sister's future by not helping her. This time, I didn't bother responding. Let them think what they want. In the end, I lost my dream car. The insurance company wouldn't pay a cent, and my rates at other companies were now through the roof. I lost my family, though honestly, had I ever really had them? I lost my comfortable apartment and had to start over somewhere new. But as I sit here in my new place, enjoying the peace and quiet of a life free from family drama, I realize I gained something too. Freedom. Freedom from the guilt trips, from the constant demands, from the expectation that I would always be the one to fix everyone else's mistakes.
Strangers, get out of our house. A few days after Richard passed away, suddenly 9 of his relatives barged into our house. They claimed the house was theirs and that I, an outsider, should leave. However, upon hearing this, I burst into laughter. Unaware of the situation, they stared at me suspiciously and pressed me for an explanation. Don't you all know? I revealed a wish Richard had entrusted to me, which left his relatives pale-faced. Shocked by the truth, they nearly collapsed. My name is Hillary Ford. I work in the kitchen of a restaurant, aged 52. Hillary, can you work overtime today? Hey, manager. Hillary said she couldn't do overtime. That's right. She has to visit her husband in the hospital. So we said we would cover for her until he's discharged. Ah. That's right. Sorry, Hillary, you can leave on time today. Our restaurant is a famous Chinese restaurant in town. It's cheap and delicious, yet voluminous, which is why there's a queue every day. I used to happily work overtime. But since my husband Richard was diagnosed with cancer and is now hospitalized, I have been leaving on time. He is 54 years old, 2 years older than me. We've been married for 30 years. But this is the first time he's faced such a serious illness. Although we discovered the cancer during a medical checkup, it had already metastasized, and his condition has rapidly deteriorated since. It's pathetic. Since I usually just stayed at home and worked, I don't have much physical strength. He worked from home as an interior coordinator, freelancing, and managed all his work on a single computer. Thanks to this, he mostly took care of the household chores, and I was free to work from morning till night. However, since he fell ill, I've had to ask my workplace for a shift change. I start early in the morning and leave during the busiest hours to take care of him. That's how I've come to rely on everyone's help. Everyone, I'm sorry for always causing trouble. What are you saying? If you look so gloomy, your husband will feel uneasy when you visit. That's right. Keep smiling and take good care of him. If things get tough, the manager can handle both the hall and the kitchen. Hey, what do you think I am? My cheerful colleagues laughed. When I asked them for help, none of them showed a displeased face and accepted it. In fact, they even suggested I leave early. The manager adjusted the shift, despite the loss of money, to my current working hours. I am truly grateful to work in such a wonderful place. Once things settle down, I'll definitely repay their kindness. With these thoughts, I thanked everyone, punched out my time card, quickly got ready, and rushed to the hospital. Ah, Mrs. Ford. The doctor just arrived and is talking with your husband. When I arrived at the hospital, a nurse kindly informed me. Upon hearing her words, I hurried to the room where Richard and the doctor were talking. Your wife is here too. Oh, you're done with work? Thanks for your hard work. Richard is 2 years older than me. People often mistook me as the older one due to his youthful face. But since his cancer diagnosis, he seems to have aged rapidly. Now, he looks his age, perhaps even older. His gaunt face has lost its vitality. And his smile is feeble. I won't lose to the disease, he had said cheerfully at first. But the body is honest. Contrary to his words, he is weakening day by day. We were just discussing the progression of his illness. My husband's condition is. Doctor, I'll explain the rest myself. I tried to hear more from the doctor, but Richard interrupted, giving me a bad feeling. The doctor seemed to sense something as well and quietly left the room after nodding. Hey, Hillary, how long have we been together since we got married? Suddenly, Richard muttered while looking out the window. More than his condition, I was perplexed but answered his question. 30 years. 30 years. It felt long, but looking back, it went by in a blink of an eye. Stop it. It sounds like the end is near. Half a year. As Richard reminisced, he spoke as if he had come to terms with the end of his life, prompting me to hastily stop his remarks. However, he spoke over my words and looked away. We've got about half a year left. Probably less. I know my own body best. Richard smiled faintly, his face downturned. The moment I heard his words, my worst fears were confirmed, and tears welled up in my eyes. Sorry, I've made you sad. I promised when we got married I'd never make you feel sad. Noticing my tears, Richard raised his head, smiled troublingly, and gently wiped away my tears with his finger. Tears were also welling up in his eyes. And seeing that, I cried even harder. I began to sob, unable to hold back my tears. When I'm gone, I have to apologize to your parents. I made their daughter cry, sorry. Stop it. If he were gone, the rest of my life would be lonely. We had laughed and talked about being together when our time came. As if he had given up on living, Richard spoke such sad words, and I openly showed my anger. It sounds like it's already decided. Don't say such sad things. Hillary. It's not definitely decided yet. Medicine has advanced. If we look for a different hospital, maybe. I'm going to be gone. Unable to accept reality, I raised my voice. Richard gently held my hand and continued his words as if to console me. I'll be gone soon. No. I absolutely don't want that. I want to take care of what needs to be done before I'm gone. I want to spend every last moment with you. Saying this, Richard shared his plans for the future. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in a hospital. I want to go back home with you. And I know you have work, Hillary, but could you take a few days off? I want to go on that trip we planned. I want to fulfill every wish you've had, so please. Richard pleaded. His words and demeanor hammered home the reality. That this was no dream, it was all too real. I was painfully aware that there was no more hope. Respecting his wishes, I held back tears and informed the doctor about our decision. The doctor respected our wishes and immediately began the discharge process, arranging for tests to ensure he could leave the hospital by tomorrow. Thus, Richard's final hospital stay was decided. Richard, I've come to visit. Hi. How are you feeling? About ready to kick the bucket, huh? Hillary, you're here too. I thought it was just Richard. Since there was time until dinner, I stayed in the hospital room to be with him as long as possible. Suddenly, Richard's mother, his brother Greg, and Greg's wife Jenny arrived to visit. It's been a while, you all. Greg, Richard's brother, is 55 and works in construction. But he has a terrible habit of slacking off and has no title at his age. Merely coasting along at work. His wife, Jenny, is 34 and beautiful. But her harsh facial expressions and terrible language, especially towards me, are striking. She seems to despise me. Their mother is 74 but looks younger and is physically fit. However, her nasty personality is clear, and she is miserly with money. She dotes on Greg and dismisses Richard. I despise Richard's family. Greg, as usual, makes insensitive jokes, and Jenny probably hates me. From the moment we met, she has treated me as an enemy, dropping snide remarks whenever she could. The mother-in-law treats Richard and me as if we are not human, constantly irritating us. She sees him as a cash cow. Every time we meet, it's always about money. Greg has a large family, doesn't he? Since you two don't have children and both earn, you must have some extra money, right? Can you spare some? This kind of pleading had become the norm. Greg's family, including his mother, is a family of 9. His previous wife ran away, leaving him with 4 stepchildren, and he remarried Jenny, who had 2 children with him, leading to a life of poverty. They couldn't make ends meet on their earnings alone and started begging us for money. What do you all want with so many of you here? What's with that tone? Your own mother comes to visit, and that's how you greet her? That's right, Richard. Value your mother. She's been lonely since your father passed away. The in-law's attitude worsened after the father-in-law passed away. He was a strict and sensible man. While he was alive, the mother-in-law did not behave this way. The family was harmonious. However, after his death from old age, she changed completely, as if freed from a shackle. She had been considerate towards us only because of the father-in-law's wishes. Without him, she treated me as an intruder. Richard, too, became merely a source of money for her. Greg had been disowned during the father's lifetime due to eloping with his previous wife. But the disownment was lifted after the father's death, and he returned home with Jenny as his new wife. Even though this town puts a lot of effort into supporting child-rearing, raising 6 children is simply beyond ordinary financial means. Richard always shook his head at such naive thinking. It's been tough making ends meet this month. Could you help us out a bit? What? Stop it. How can you say such foolish things at a time like this? Stay out of this, outsider. This is a family matter. That's how it is. Furious at their audacity, I raised my voice in anger, but Greg dismissed me. And Jenny laughed mockingly at me, shooing me away as if I were a dog. I'm sorry, but we can't spare any money. Oh. That's inconvenient. I thought you'd have some money since I came all this way. Sigh. Really, what a useless son. His mother muttered under her breath, barely audible to Richard. The 3 of them were behaving in a way that stretched the limits of decency. So, how is he doing? The cancer progression, discharge plans? Clearly, she wasn't asking out of concern. It was typical of her greedy nature. Probably scheming for some financial benefit. He has about 6 months left. He'll be discharged tomorrow to spend his remaining time at home. Seriously? At that moment, their eyes gleamed, not with shock, but with a gleeful expression that was hard to believe. The sight of their joy at such news was nauseating. Then, I'll come to pick him up when he's discharged. You'll need a car, right? That won't be necessary. Despite Richard maintaining his composure, his mother and the others kept pushing their limits. Unable to tolerate their behavior any longer, I forcibly pushed the three of them out of the room. Hey, what are you doing? Please leave. I will handle everything on the day of his discharge. So there is no need for you to come. Don't ever show your face again. What? Hey, are you kidding? I dismissed any further complaints from them, slammed the door shut, and locked it. I quickly explained the situation to the hospital staff, asked the nurse to restrict visits to anyone but me, and ensured that the in-laws could not meet Richard. Sorry, Hillary. I've caused you trouble. Why don't you stand up to them? They're mocking you, treating you like a cash cow? It was frustrating. Why should such rotten people live comfortably, while someone as good as Richard has to disappear? It might be misdirected anger, but I couldn't bear it. I still deeply love Richard and couldn't accept the reality of him being gone. I didn't want to stress myself arguing back. But, seeing you speak up clearly for me made me happy. That's why I have a favor to ask of you. A favor? Then, Richard entrusted me with a task. The content was so shocking that I couldn't hide my surprise. However, he was dead serious, looking earnestly at me and emphasizing his request. It's my first and last favor, so please. Understood. Thus, I took charge of something from Richard and returned home that day. Before his relatives could arrive the next day, I hurriedly discharged Richard from the hospital. Even though we were home, I feared his relatives might show up at any moment. Wanting to keep Richard away from them, I changed one of his wishes. Instead of staying at our house, I asked an acquaintance for a favor, and we temporarily moved into a villa they owned. Being away from home was a bit sad, but I don't care where I am as long as you're with me, Richard said with a bashful smile, making me blush a bit too. After that, I explained the situation to my workplace and took a long leave of absence. I wanted to be by Richard's side until the last moments of his life. With the help of friends, Richard was able to spend his remaining time peacefully until he passed away quietly in his bed 6 months later. At the funeral, I reunited with his relatives after a long time. I braced myself for their comments, but instead of showing sorrow, they simply smirked and stared at me with eerie smiles. The creepiness of their grins sent chills down my spine. What did that smile mean? I was soon to find out. After the funeral, when I was back home sorting through Richard's belongings, the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I was greeted by his mother and Greg, both carrying an excessive amount of luggage. We finally found you. Got a call from a neighbor saying you're back. What's with all this luggage? His mother complained as she tried to barge inside, but I blocked her way at the entrance, and Greg glared at me annoyingly. What are you doing? Move, you're in the way. I won't move. What's with this luggage? And why have you brought the kids too? Behind Greg, his entire family was present. I was puzzled by the situation, but showing confusion would play into their hands. They must have schemed something and come to our house. I decided to confront them firmly. Laughing mockingly, his mother uttered an unbelievable statement. From today, this house is ours. Others, get out of our house. I was stunned by her words. Unbelievably, his relatives, all 9 of them, had decided to take over our house on their own. Lost for words at their audacity, I was left speechless. A son's possessions naturally belong to his blood relatives, right? He even left us his will like this. She flaunted a will in front of me. However, hearing this, I burst out laughing, finding their foolishness hilarious. What's so funny? Jenny peeked from behind Greg, glaring at me displeased by my reaction. Wiping the tears from my laughter, I shared a shocking truth with the disgruntled relatives. Don't you know? This house is mine now. What? Huh? Confused by my words, his relatives looked dumbfounded. Their clueless faces made me want to laugh again. But I held back and went to get a document from another room. As you can see, the real owner of this house is me. Richard changed the ownership to me while he was still alive, thinking it would be more helpful for the future. What did you say? Hearing about the change of ownership, his mother widened her eyes in shock. She hurriedly snatched the document from me and examined it closely with Greg. It's really written here. The ownership is in this woman's name. The document was authentic, and the ownership was indeed in my name. Realizing the truth of my words, Greg and Jenny raised their voices. But I responded nonchalantly. You must be mistaken. The ownership was supposed to be in Richard's name, wasn't it? When he was discharged, he changed the ownership to me on his own volition. At that point, his mother interrupted, "That's not right," and thrust the will she had at me. It can't be. Because here, I have a will that he supposedly wrote. The paper she showed was indeed written in Richard's handwriting. However, it lacked any signature, rendering it non-functional as a will. Dismayed by their ignorance, I sighed deeply. But knowing they wouldn't listen to anything I said, I asked them to wait and made a phone call. Thank you for your help. I'm sorry to trouble you, but Richard's family has stormed in over the will. Could you please come over right away? Thank you. Who were you calling just now? Startled by my sudden phone call, Greg looked at me suspiciously. I didn't answer him in detail, but merely indicated for them to come inside. I seated his mother and Greg on the sofa and instructed the kids to play. Soon, the doorbell rang again, and I went to greet the caller, leading him directly into the living room. Sorry for the delay. A man in a suit entered, and Greg's group immediately became defensive, eyeing him with hostility. It's no trouble at all. Sorry for the sudden call. This is Mr. Anderson, a lawyer who has been helping us with Richard's affairs. I called him because your mother mentioned bringing a will. A lawyer? As soon as they realized Mr. Anderson was a lawyer, his mother exclaimed in shock. I had met lawyer Anderson through a friend who had lent us the villa, and he had explained the situation to him. At first, Richard and I were anxious because Mr. Anderson was a young lawyer, just 30 years old. However, he was quick-witted and had a strong track record with family disputes, which reassured us after meeting him. We had entrusted him with all matters regarding the estate and the family dispute. His relatives had no idea Richard had hired a lawyer. Their faces showed surprise as if they had never heard such a thing. Greg and his family were also shocked and lost for words. Allow me to reintroduce myself. I'm Lawyer Anderson. I've come to discuss matters concerning Richard. We will be recording this conversation as it will serve as evidence. In contrast to Greg's flashy long hair, Lawyer Anderson had short hair and wore glasses to soften his sharp gaze. presenting a clean and professional appearance. Forgetting her place, his mother looked at Lawyer Anderson with admiration. Lawyer Anderson greeted, and the relatives, led by his gesture, also greeted and received his business card and lawyer badge. Seeing the badge, his mother straightened up. Greg and Jenny did the same, their demeanor tense. I sat down on the sofa with Lawyer Anderson, ready to face his relatives. Lawyer Anderson skillfully activated a voice recorder and started the discussion. Your mother has brought a will. May I take a look at it? Lawyer Anderson spoke calmly, perhaps too assertively, as his mother's hands trembled slightly with the will, likely overwhelmed by anxiety about not having such a backup, and possibly losing out on the inheritance. Facing a practicing lawyer, they couldn't just talk their way out of it, and their concern about an unfavorable turn of events was evident. Lawyer Anderson quietly reviewed the will handed to him by his mother. After reading it, he looked at me and nodded once. Thank you. I'll return this to you. Lawyer Anderson handed the will back to his mother with a forced smile. This seemed to fuel her anxiety further, prompting her to question the validity of the document. It was Richard's will, right? Yes, it appears to be Mr. Richard's will indeed. See? This means the house is ours now. His mother became confident upon hearing the affirmation of the will. However, Lawyer Anderson quickly dampened her expectations by adding, it's an older version. What did you say? At the words issued from his mouth, my mother-in-law frowned and urged him to repeat himself, as if saying, say that again. Didn't you hear? While it is indeed a will of Richard, it stated. The valid will, recognized officially, would be this one. Lawyer Anderson then pulled out a newer document from his bag. It read, all my assets shall belong to Hillary. Any previous wills written to my mother are hereby invalidated, and this will shall stand effective. What? Let me see that. Jenny snatched the will from Lawyer Anderson to verify it. The document not only had a more recent date but also included Richard's signature. Clear proof of its authenticity, especially since it mentioned being drafted with legal assistance. As the reality dawned on Jenny and the others, their faces drained of color, and his mother began to tremble. So, this will is. Essentially, it's just a piece of useless paper. No way. At the mention of useless paper, Greg directed his anger toward his mother. Despite being in front of a lawyer, he lashed out at her rapidly. What the hell, old hag? You said the inheritance would be ours, just leave it to you. Greg was almost about to grab his mother as he hurled words at her. Jenny tried desperately to hold him back, but Greg, fueled by male aggression, shrugged her off and continued his verbal assault, his mother cowering in fear. In the midst of this chaos, I glared sternly at Greg and spoke calmly. Could you please refrain from causing a scene in someone else's home? It's extremely troublesome. What did you say? If you act out of line here, we can have Lawyer Anderson provide evidence and take this to court. Mentioning Lawyer Anderson seemed to bring Greg back to his senses. Remembering that the opponent was a lawyer, he hastily sat back down on the sofa. By the way, was that will really written by Richard's own volition? Seeing that things had settled, I directed a question at his mother. She seemed ready to affirm it was his handwriting, but I waited quietly for her response. Yes, he wrote it for me when he was hospitalized. Really? And he wrote it willingly, did he? Exactly, that's what your mother-in-law is saying. What's with all these questions? Jenny cut in, clearly frustrated by my interrogation style. His mother nodded in agreement, and seeing this, I exchanged a knowing glance with Lawyer Anderson. He adjusted his glasses and nodded back at me, giving the go-ahead. That's strange then. Because according to the hospital's security camera footage, you forced Richard to write that will. I pulled out a laptop from my bag, inserted a USB drive provided by the hospital, and started playing the video. When I had approached Lawyer Anderson about Richard's situation, Richard had informed him that he had been coerced into writing the will. I explained this to the hospital as well. The hospital, willing to cooperate fully, provided the surveillance camera footage. I immediately downloaded this data and displayed the recorded video on the screen. You wouldn't want to see your assets go to waste after you're gone, huh? His mother could be heard coercing Richard in the video, with Greg and Jenny also complicit in the act. If you don't want that woman to suffer, just keep quiet and write the will. Right, Richard. If you just quietly write this, no harm will come to that woman at all. This footage was taken 3 days before Richard's discharge. They had inquired about his cancer's progression specifically to hasten their plan for the inheritance. It's not like that. We were just joking around. Yeah? We watched a drama before going to the hospital. And the villain was so cool, I just tried to mimic him. It wasn't serious, can't you let it slide? As they realized their disadvantage, the three began to frantically defend themselves. But their excuses only fueled my anger, and I sighed in disgust at their pitiful display. Even if you admitted it honestly, trying to cover it up makes you a perpetrator. Mr. Anderson, can we apply charges of coercion against them? Of course, we have their statements recorded clearly. Lawyer Anderson picked up the voice recorder with a broad smile. Greg and the others paled, having forgotten about the recorder as they spoke. That's why we will be seeking damages for everything on behalf of that person. No. Wait, Hillary. It was only your mother-in-law who made him write it, we were just there. Jenny tried to deflect responsibility. But what followed was an ugly dispute between his mother and Greg. You were all complicit in forcing him to write that will. Mom said she could handle it well. We were just there, didn't do anything. But you were threatening Richard to write quickly. That was because his consultation time was nearing, not to force him to sign the will. If we dawdled, you might come, Hillary. Indeed, they had deliberately targeted the time I was away. Jenny made a statement that provided further evidence, but in their desperation to argue, they likely hadn't realized it. The three continued their ugly squabble, seemingly unable to stop. The children, who had been playing in the back, must have become concerned by the arguing because they all came over. Among them was a child as young as 2. I could see the anxiety in their eyes. I knew the children weren't at fault. So I quickly called over my eldest nephew, a 5th grader, told him to move to another room, and urged him not to watch the adults' disgraceful fighting. Unsure of what was happening, he did as told, taking his younger siblings with him. Once the children were out of sight, I coldly addressed the 3 adults. Aren't you embarrassed? You're still parents, right? What did you say? To argue in front of the children, blaming each other. I'm speechless at your shameful behavior. Don't you feel pathetic pushing responsibility onto others? Jenny seemed to snap out of it and glanced toward where the children had disappeared. Remembering their anxious exit, she came over to me and apologized. I'm sorry. I admit to everything, the threats and all past actions. Please, forgive us." Greg and his mother, too, hurriedly apologized, desperately trying to find a way out. "We need to support those kids, so please, the money. If I'm hit with a compensation claim now, I don't know how I'll manage to live. Please, have mercy. If there's a crime, I'll atone for it." The three of them pleaded tearfully, but my anger exploded. In the end, it's all about your own lives, your money. There's no real remorse. But that's not. We don't mean it that way. It's just that life is tough. And we wanted you to understand our situation. You know what that is? It's called an excuse. Craig jerked as if stung by my words. Jenny and his mother probably felt the same. They scrambled to apologize, but I didn't let them get a word in and continued sharply. "No matter how much you apologize, I have no intention of forgiving you. If you're really concerned about the children, then work harder and pay back what you owe. All this happened because you forced Richard to do those things. Why should I forgive you? That's absurd." The three found no words to counter mine. "If you understand, then please leave. This house is a precious place filled with my memories. And I have no intention of sharing my life with you. Please, Hillary. Forgive us. We were wrong. Hillary, please." Their desperate pleas continued. But I coldly threatened to call the police if they spoke further. Realizing the seriousness of a police report, they quickly gathered their children and belongings and left my home. Lawyer Anderson and I watched with cold eyes as the dysfunctional family members exited. After making sure they had left, we immediately locked the door. "Finally, it's over," I sighed in relief alongside Lawyer Anderson. I then asked Lawyer Anderson to proceed with the compensation claim process, which he had already prepared thoroughly. The claim was processed smoothly, and the three were billed a combined sum of $30,000 for coercing Richard into writing the will. They couldn't afford the large sum and proposed a settlement, but I refused to compromise. "You'll pay in full." Because they couldn't negotiate, their lives changed drastically. The mother had to care for 6 children alone from morning till night. Greg and Jenny worked non-stop, living in poverty. They sold the mother's house and moved into a cramped apartment with 9 people. Although they managed to repay the compensation without fail, their life never regained comfort. And it seemed their hardship would continue until the youngest child became an adult. Thus, I successfully cut ties with them. Even after sorting through the possessions, I continued living in that house. I kept working, and occasionally my colleagues would visit, which helped alleviate any loneliness. Here's today's offering. I would say daily, joining my hands in prayer and telling Richard about my day. It was our last promise, after all. Even if I become frail and need hospitalization, I'll continue to pray for you every day. On that day, Richard had asked me for one last thing, to talk to him in front of his portrait daily. "I love our talks and your voice. I want it to reach me even in heaven." With those words, Richard had passed away. I vowed to keep our promise until the day I would join him. I refuse to become a beggar living off welfare for the rest of my life with an old hag like you. I will make sure everything is settled properly. During an unexpected reunion with my ex-husband, who had selfishly demanded a divorce and kicked me out of the house, he claimed he would bill me for all the expenses incurred over the years. Okay, got it. Let's settle everything properly. 2 days after I readily agreed, my ex-husband, who had gone insane, bombarded me with calls. My name is Ashley Morris, a 35-year-old housewife. I met and married Jeff through an arranged marriage when I was quite young. As both my parents had died when I was in high school, leaving me completely alone. No matter how much you manage to live on, it's tough without a family. Although I had an inheritance from my parents and wasn't struggling with money, I had no one to rely on. Ashley, if you'd like, why don't you try an arranged marriage? If you marry a good person, you can help each other and I'll feel at ease. A friend of my mother's, concerned about me, had suggested I participate in arranged meetings. There I met my husband, who said, "I just started working and might not be very reliable, but I am serious about you, Ashley." Attracted by his sincerity, we dated for 3 years and eventually got married. However, life wasn't smooth sailing, as we were getting used to married life and considering having children. My father-in-law suffered a severe back injury, and his wife alone couldn't manage. I'm worried, maybe we could live together and I could help? Of course. Filial piety is something you can only do while you're alive. Leave everything about the house to me. Wanting to help my in-laws who treated me like their own daughter, I became a full-time housewife to support them. You're coming home late recently. Is it that hard? Shut up, I'm the one providing for you, so no complaints. However, my husband began spending less time at home, and his attitude towards me turned cold. I wonder what's wrong. Maybe it's getting harder since I became a housewife. But maybe things will get better once your father is well again. Despite feeling insecure, I remained optimistic. But then my father-in-law's illness was discovered, and I had no chance to discuss it with my husband. I'm sorry we've been a burden since we got married. You wanted children, and we've only been a nuisance. My health deteriorated, causing trouble for Ashley. Don't worry too much. I think of you both as my real parents. Let me show my filial piety. I acted cheerfully towards my apologetic in-laws, hoping they would recover as I worked hard on caregiving and household chores. Then, when my father-in-law eventually passed away, and while still in shock, I was told, "Finally, the dead weight is gone. You're useless now too." What? What are you talking about? I was stunned by these words right after the funeral. My husband then said, "I was holding back because of my father, but I don't need you. Who neglected your own husband? You were cold to me, right? Always busy with my father and mother. You are their child, aren't you? Besides, you hardly ever came home, and you never listened to me. That's your fault for not trying hard enough. I don't want to be with someone who has no children with me anymore. I have someone who loves me and a child with her. An old hag like you is just in the way. Divorce me and get out quickly." Already shocked by my father-in-law's death, I couldn't think straight when faced with this devastating revelation from my husband, and ended up divorcing and leaving the in-laws' house with my belongings. There were times I prioritized your parents, but that was something Jeff initially asked for. And he wasn't even coming home. We had decided to put off having children for a while. If you hated it, you should have told me. But whenever I tried to talk, you always got upset. Our marriage was impossible. I had my grievances with my ex-husband, but I didn't regret the divorce. Anyway, I need to find a place to live and a job. Soon after, I found a place to live and was looking for a job. Hey, isn't that Ashley? What are you doing here? While I was looking at job flyers in a store, my ex-husband approached me. Next to him was a young woman holding a baby. I thought, I remember he mentioned something about cheating. So it was true. He even has a child now. How old is this person? During this unexpected reunion with my ex-husband and his shockingly young mistress, I remained silent as he smirked and said, "Well, it's good I caught you. You spent money without permission during my father's caregiving." Huh? Confused and without any recollection, he continued in a domineering tone. "Don't play dumb. After checking Dad's savings, there was less than there should have been. He had a good position and should have had more savings. Isn't it strange? You must have used it since I saw Mom giving you money. You were receiving quite a bit, right? I was managing the household, and the money I received was for shopping on their behalf. I hadn't managed my in-laws' savings, but my ex-husband wasn't convinced. Anyway, I want back the money you cost me during our marriage. I refuse to become a beggar living off welfare for the rest of my life with an old hag like you. I will make sure everything is settled properly." My ex-husband was adamant about getting his money back. "It's your fault for running off with the household money, you know? Make sure you return it." His mistress glared at me and said that. I thought, something about this situation seems off. Feeling a discrepancy in their reactions, but unable to clarify here, I said, "Okay, that's fine. Money matters need careful management. It's not appropriate here and we'll need documents, right? Let's discuss this in detail next time." I agreed to a discussion proposed by my ex-husband. Good as long as you understand. Don't think you can escape by not wanting to pay. I wouldn't do that. Here, this is my current home address and phone number. Contact me when you're ready. After giving him my contact information, I immediately went home. Then, 2 days later, while I was working, I noticed dozens of missed calls from my ex-husband on my smartphone. I thought, why is he calling this much? As I was puzzled looking at the call history, the phone rang again, so I answered. "Hey, what's going on here?" "What do you mean?" But my ex-husband was making no sense at all. "Just calm down. What do you need? How can you live there? It's ridiculous." It seemed like he wasn't listening to my voice. "I'm at work right now, so I'll contact you later." After saying this, I hung up and focused on my job. After work, I checked and saw that he had called several times again. Maybe I can read an email more calmly. I sent an email to set up a meeting date with my ex-husband and headed home. He quickly confirmed, and since the next day was a holiday, we arranged to meet at a store. When I arrived, he was already there, and upon seeing me, he burst out, "Hey! What's the meaning of this? What do you mean? Explain it to me calmly." He began to interrogate me in an agitated manner. Once we sat down and I showed readiness to listen, he launched into his tirade. "The address you gave. Isn't that a luxury high-rise apartment? How can you, a housewife, afford to live in such a place? You must have taken your father-in-law's inheritance." "There's no way I would take your father's inheritance. That's my parents' inheritance." I responded calmly to my furious ex-husband. "Your parents' inheritance? But they died a long time ago, didn't they? You said you used it for your school fees." "It's true that I used some for school fees, but both of my parents were originally wealthy. And there was quite a lot left, including real estate. I've managed it carefully since it was what my parents left me, and it has grown over time. I had thought my parents were wealthy, but I was surprised to see just how much they had left when I checked the inheritance. This much? They even left land and buildings." With this, there was no problem going to high school. But it's an inheritance left by my parents, so I'll use it carefully. I felt the inheritance was like a memento of my parents. And I learned about asset management and real estate handling thereafter. Even after quitting my job, I managed the assets. I also make use of the real estate I own, and I get a monthly rental income. So now my annual income is about $2 million. That's why living in that high-rise apartment is easy. After you kicked me out, I was looking for a place and a real estate agent friend recommended it. Because it was available. It has good facilities and high security. So I bought an entire floor. It's just right for living leisurely by myself. $2 million. That much. And you bought a high-rise apartment. That alone could build a whole house. My ex-husband was so shocked he froze. But soon recovered and started questioning me accusingly. I didn't hear anything about this. We were married, why didn't you tell me anything? If I knew you had so much money, I wouldn't have cheated. As if he was implying that the cheating was somehow my fault. I sighed in disbelief before explaining. Even between spouses, money can change things. I'd be troubled if you relied on my wealth, and besides, savings from before our marriage are still personal, so it's none of your business. Plus, it's troublesome to be known as rich. It was tough when I inherited my fortune. But I had allies who helped me protect my parents' inheritance. That's when I learned not to speak carelessly about my own wealth. And to be cautious about whom I tell. A friend of my mother's had helped me greatly, had it not been for her. I don't know what would have happened. When she suggested the arranged marriage, she also advised me. Don't disclose the amount of your inheritance or savings. Say an average amount. If you reveal you have money up front, you might end up in a marriage for money. To choose someone who will seriously think about your future. Even if you can trust them, you shouldn't disclose your wealth carelessly. I had heard this from my parents before, but I didn't understand well at the time. Thinking if I won a large lottery, I'd be followed around. But when I grow up, I don't think I'll have that much money. I thought my parents were just being paranoid. But when it was reiterated to me, I truly understood its significance. I thought Aunt was quite wealthy, too. She must have had a hard time. Indeed, she has a good upbringing, but she never flaunted it. I need to be careful about my relationships. Aunt was originally rich. Since becoming successful as an investor, I've become even more cautious. Even when I was attracted to my ex-husband, I thought, he's bright, and being with him makes me feel more alive. He's working hard towards the future, and he's serious, so marriage might work. But he's young, and if I told him about my wealth, he might lose his motivation to work. Even if it doesn't bother him at first, it might eventually. So if I were to tell him, it would be much later. I was still making rational decisions even when excited. I did want to tell you someday. That's why I was observing your actions. To see if it would be safe to tell you. But since we started living together, you did nothing about the house and acted all high and mighty about providing for us. When I thought you were coming home, you were actually cheating. I'm glad I didn't tell you. It's an amount that wouldn't have been necessary in ordinary life. And if we had children, maybe I would have told them because they would have to inherit it. That is. No, if I had known about the money, I would have done the caregiving myself. Supporting 3 people alone was tough. He still seemed to want to blame me, but his argument was unreasonable. Like I said, assets before marriage are none of your business, right? You were the one who said money wouldn't be a problem. When we decided to live together because you'd earn enough. It's your parents, so of course, you should help. When we considered living with the in-laws, we thought it would be better if one of us stayed home. You're better at housework, Ashley, so you can take care of the house. I'll work to compensate. I don't mind quitting my job, but there might be times when I'll need your help, Jeff. It'll be tough, but are you okay with that? I'm young and strong, no problem. That was how we decided to live together, but during the divorce, my ex-husband exploded with complaints he had been harboring. Could you not blame me for your cheating? If you had complaints, you should have spoken up. Instead, you reduced your time at home as if running away. You were cold to your own parents. Do you know how sad your father was? How many times had I felt helpless due to my selfish ex-husband? At first, his behavior wasn't overt. I thought, it seems like there's a distance between him and his father. I felt that he had become less attentive to his disabled father than before. I thought, he used to talk proudly about his father. Now, it seems like he's avoiding him. He talks to his mother, but I've never seen him do that with his father. But maybe I'm just overthinking it. However, my ex-husband's behavior changed. I'm tired from work. And yet, you want me to help around the house? Don't you have any intention of letting me rest? What's the point of being a housewife? I didn't mean that. I'm earning to provide for us. Late coming home? It's because I'm working overtime. Don't come complaining at me. He started to lash out at me more often, and treated his parents as if they were non-existent, growing colder towards them. I thought, I'm sure he must be tired. Maybe I should prepare some light snacks and soothing items so he can relax at home. I then made an extra effort with my husband's lunches, and started being more attentive than before. Thank you for your hard work as always. Here's your lunch. I put in some fried chicken today. What would you like for dinner tonight? While I tried to include his favorite dishes and paid attention to health, he would say, I'll be late, so I don't need it. I'm going to eat with people from work, so I don't need the lunch either. Thus, my husband increasingly ate out. On his days off, he often said he had work and would leave the house. Oh, Jeff isn't here today? Where could he be going, leaving Ashley behind? It's because I hurt my back. I'm sorry to have married you and then caused you nothing but trouble. It's not your fault, Father. He's just busy with work. Despite the change in my husband's attitude, I reassured the worried in-laws that they shouldn't feel guilty. However, my ex-husband's behavior didn't improve, and as his father's health worsened. I haven't seen Jeff lately. Hasn't he come home? No, he does come home, but it's always late at night, after you've gone to sleep, Mother. Is he really coming home that late? I see him less and less lately. Are you managing to spend any time with Jeff? Is he barely home even though he lives in the same house? Does he care about you, Ashley? My mother-in-law was so concerned about our marriage. The truth is, we've been talking less and less, and honestly, our relationship has become quite cold. I hadn't intended to tell my mother-in-law, but perhaps I was at my limit. I had been talking with my husband only about essential matters. I thought, we used to talk and have fun. Now, it seems like he has no interest in family life and is just going through the motions. The more I try to talk to him, the more he ignores me. I had resigned myself to my husband's indifference, but still felt a hint of sadness. I let something slip in conversation. What? That stupid son of mine. You've always been so good to us, Ashley. I'm sorry about our son. My mother-in-law was on my side. Being a full-time housewife, I spent a lot of time at home, and we had grown as close as real parents and child. I thought, the in-laws are so kind to me, but why has Jeff changed so much? He used to be so bright and never cold towards me. I don't feel like I can continue being married to Jeff, but if we divorced, I can't imagine him managing on his own, and I'm worried about the in-laws. I had been considering divorce for years. Both of them apologized to me as if they were sorry for having such a son. Father even worried about me to the very end. You wouldn't know since you were always avoiding him. That is, my ex-husband, perhaps feeling a bit guilty, hesitated in his response. When I knew his father's condition was dire, I approached him. Hey, why don't you also visit your father? You can only show filial piety while he's alive, you know? Huh? Perhaps surprised because I hadn't spoken to him properly recently, I continued. We haven't talked properly lately. The doctor said he doesn't have much time left. I don't want you to have regrets. Although there was hardly any affection left in him, I regretted not being able to show filial piety when my parents passed away suddenly. I don't want Jeff to experience the same. I had agreed to live with the in-laws and become a housewife. They treat me like their own daughter, and I can't just ignore them. I decided to do for them what I wished I could have done for my own parents. Jeff should care about his parents too. And maybe if we got along better in the end, it would bring peace to Father. With a slight hope that Jeff would care, I spoke to him. Unusually for me to initiate conversation. He listened silently but then left the house as if nothing had happened. I thought, it's always about Father's inheritance with him, and he doesn't seem sad. I didn't sense any secret tears at the funeral. I was disappointed that he only seemed to care about the inheritance. I thought he used to be considerate of others, but he's changed. Watching my ex-husband, I realized once more that any expectations of him had disappeared. Before you brought up divorce, I had honestly been considering it too. We hadn't been talking, and there was nothing we did together anymore. The only reason I hadn't divorced was because I was worried about the in-laws. Exhausted, I spoke, and my ex-husband said nothing. I thought, I'm tired of being with this person, and I want to end this conversation quickly. Emotionally charged from my ex-husband's accusations, I too was slightly dragged into it, but regained my composure to address the matter. So, this was about settling things from when we were married? I've been concerned about the money from that time too, so let's get this settled quickly. As I mentioned this, my ex-husband perked up and began. Yeah, that's right. I want you to return the money from when we were married. With a triumphant look, I smiled and presented the documents. Here you go. These are the medical bills for Father's treatment that I covered. And since you cheated, I'd like the compensation for that too, please. What? Explaining to my ex-husband, who looked confused. Your father got a slipped disc, and after he recovered, he got sick again. So the medical expenses were significant. Initially, I used savings. But as the money dwindled, I covered the costs. Of course, the in-laws hadn't asked me to. We didn't have enough money for treatment. I couldn't even talk to Jeff about it. I'm supposed to leave the house management to Ashley. But I thought about working. Is there somewhere I can work? Looking at the passbook and making a difficult face, my mother-in-law had consulted with me. I thought, the in-laws are trying to manage on their own. Even though they aren't very physically strong. Moved by my in-laws, I immediately decided to help. Then I'll pay for it. I have savings from before I was married. And I've been investing that money, so I have a decent amount saved up. I kept silent about the inheritance and told them that. But you are already taking care of us. And we shouldn't trouble her any more than we have to. Plus, what you earned before you married is yours. You don't have to go to such lengths just because you're our daughter-in-law. I think of you, my in-laws, like my real parents. I couldn't do much filial piety for my own parents, so please let me handle this. Really? Then may I rely on you? I will definitely repay you someday. When my father-in-law found out I would cover the costs, he said, "Our son isn't reliable, but thank you so much, Ashley. I'll get well soon and repay you for your kindness." He became more motivated for his treatments than before. I've been keeping track of the household expenses. So I've written down the amount I covered. I've kept the receipts too. I didn't think I'd ask to be repaid, but if you're settling up, then please make sure you pay. What? $8,000? Isn't that too much? I've been hospitalized several times, and the medication costs a considerable amount. So it amounts to that much. I've recorded everything, you can see for yourself. Although I mentioned settling things from when we were married, my ex-husband was only thinking about extorting money from me. So when he realized he would be the one paying, he turned pale. And there's also the compensation for the affair. What? We're already divorced, it has nothing to do with you. Since the divorce was recent, I can still claim compensation. I've hired a detective agency to gather evidence of the affair. I haven't received the report yet, but they've told me the affair is certain. After bumping into my ex-husband unexpectedly, to be suspected of taking the inheritance. I have records of the money I used. But it would be troublesome if he screamed and didn't believe my explanation. So I should hire a third party. Thinking this, I had already consulted a detective agency and a lawyer. Why would you do such a thing? It's a matter of money, of course. If you don't like it, you can hire a lawyer too. Though you'll definitely lose. I can't pay that. I have children to take care of. My ex-husband murmured a lie, starting to give off a sense of desperation. It seemed impossible to continue the conversation. You'll have to take responsibility for what you've done. Once the documents are ready, let's talk again. I called out to my ex-husband, though I was not sure he was listening, and then left the store. Later, I visited the in-laws' home with a lawyer. Because I couldn't reach my ex-husband by contact. I thought, you probably wish this never happened, but that won't work. Since nothing was progressing, we decided to make a surprise visit today. When I rang the doorbell, my ex-husband was the one who appeared. What? Why is Ashley here? I told you we'd talk again. I called and emailed but got no response, so I came. I am the lawyer representing her. We have prepared the documents and evidence, so we can settle this quickly. Hearing this, my ex-husband turned pale and suddenly apologized. I'm sorry. Please stop the demand for compensation. I don't have the money to pay. Think an apology is enough? You're the one who had an affair. And I have the right to claim compensation. What, you have plenty of money. It won't matter if I don't pay. You have a legal obligation to pay damages for the affair. It's determined by law. I'm telling you I can't pay. My ex-husband was desperate not to pay, and his voice had become quite loud. What's all this noise about? Attracted by the commotion, my mother-in-law and the mistress, holding a baby, came timidly outside. Oh, isn't that Ashley? Upon noticing me, my mother-in-law exclaimed in surprise and approached. I'm truly sorry. Ashley has been so kind to us. Then she also apologized. Mother, that position is bad for your body. Please sit normally. I hurriedly helped her stand up. Since the mistress looked confused, I explained everything from the beginning. I came here today because he had told me we would settle things from when we were married. I intended to have him pay for the treatment costs I covered, and for compensation for the affair, but he didn't think he would have to pay. I haven't been able to contact him, so I came today. What? You should pay Ashley properly. But I have a child, and if I pay, I won't be able to live. Being scolded by his mother, the reluctant ex-husband was told, you should definitely pay if you had an affair. What? Sarah. Even the mistress began to blame him. You were his previous wife. I'm really sorry. I didn't know, and I apologize for driving you out. Confronted by the mistress who had previously been hostile, I asked to confirm. Didn't you know Jeff was married? I thought he was single because he wasn't wearing a ring. He told me he wanted to get married. I was pregnant while we were dating. I was still in university. Had no parents, and he was the only person I could rely on. We were seriously dating, so when I asked, he agreed to marry me. She took a deep breath, her face contorted as she continued. But after we got married, I heard he was previously married. Women's clothes that weren't his mother's appeared at home, and when I confronted him, he said they belonged to his ex-wife. He explained that he had squandered money, and when he said he wanted a divorce, he was stopped until it finally stopped. I was relieved because he seemed repentant, and I believed him until I met you and glared at you. The mistress looked apologetically at me and continued. But something about what his mother said started to feel off. Jeff would complain about his ex-wife not doing housework. But it seemed to me that he couldn't do it either. At first, I was relieved to marry even though I had no relatives. But now I can no longer trust Jeff. If possible, I'd like a divorce. What? What are you saying? My ex-husband was shocked, but it seemed only natural. I thought, to be lied to by someone you trusted in marriage. It's understandable to become fed up with Jeff, who doesn't seem to want to protect his family. I couldn't help but feel sympathy for the frail mistress. I had learned about her when I investigated the affair. She went to university and lost her parents, somewhat like me. But she didn't have much inheritance, so she had to work multiple part-time jobs. Perhaps she dated Jeff, seeking a stable life. It turns out she was deceived by my ex-husband. It's been a month since I saw my mother-in-law, and she seemed noticeably thinner. I thought, it seems she's been sick with worry since our divorce. And Jeff doesn't seem the type to care for his parents. I was concerned about how my mother-in-law was doing after the divorce. And if the mistress were to divorce as well, she would struggle with a child to raise. Thinking this situation was untenable, I proposed. Why don't you and Sarah come live with me? My house is spacious enough. And it would be perfect if you could come. What? What are you talking about? You be quiet. What do you think? I'm worried about leaving you in such a house, even if it's just temporarily. Ashley is a stranger now, right? Are you planning to abandon your real son and go with her, Mom? Sarah, you're married to me. To this, the two women responded sternly to my ex-husband. A son who dumps everything on Ashley and then cheats isn't a son at all. We don't want a liar. Besides, he doesn't help with the child or anything. He's not reliable as a husband. Leaving the complaining ex-husband behind, we all left the house together. Later, we started living together. I filed for compensation from my ex-husband and also demanded child support payments for the mistress. If I had stayed married, I would have had money and a child. Now I'm swamped in debt. Of course, my ex-husband's savings were not enough to pay, and he would likely be busy repaying debts for a while. As for us, is it really okay for me to be a burden too? I didn't know, but I had an affair. The mistress said apologetically to me, but I reassured her. Jeff is the one at fault. You had a tough time suddenly losing your parents. It was Jeff who took advantage of you. There's a baby involved, let's help each other. And as we lived supporting one another, we became like a real family. I thought, it feels so peaceful. Having a family that can help each other is really wonderful. I strongly felt the desire to protect this life, reminiscent of the security I had when living with my parents. I also decided to donate some of my assets to a non-profit organization that supports people without relatives or single mothers. I had assets and people to help me, but there are many who aren't so lucky and struggle. I hope I can help them a little. It might be self-satisfaction, but I hope that someone in a similar situation to ours can be saved. I'll say this first because it's important. Give me all the money. Huh? Money? Watching me in confusion, my sister-in-law laughs through her nose. I'll manage the money. Don't overstep your boundaries as a daughter-in-law. What is this person, who hasn't come to this house in 10 years, saying now? Do you intend not to obey? The moment I saw the face of my sister-in-law, grinning with an ugly smile, something that had been tense since my husband passed away snapped. Obey? I will not let this selfish woman take away my precious money and time. She'll regret this. My name is Kim. Last week, on my 65th birthday, my husband's health suddenly deteriorated, and he passed away. Since then, I haven't even had time to grieve, and today is the wake. I stare intently at the smiling portrait of my husband. I never imagined something like this happening. I recall a conversation I had with my husband just the other day. He was talking excitedly about taking up walking so we could enjoy traveling together in our old age, wanting to get better at cooking, or studying his hobby of photography again. I never doubted that we could continue to live life as usual. Tears almost start to form, and I take a deep breath. I can't afford to be down forever. I shouldn't make the worrisome man hesitate in his departure. I'm also concerned about my mother-in-law, who has been living with us for many years. But don't worry, I'll take care of her as usual. But it's unfilial of me to pass away before my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law has mild dementia. She repeatedly talks about the past, forgets things, and confuses people. It's like she's returned to her childhood, indulging in fantasies and being selfish. Her legs and hips are bad, so she needs help with changing clothes and using the toilet. But I've gotten used to it after doing it for 7 years. Life with just me and my mother-in-law will surely be lonelier than before. Maybe I'll have her tell me stories about my husband's childhood when that time comes. The funeral and cremation went smoothly, and after finishing the remaining paperwork and cleaning up, my morning leave ended. As I take care of my mother-in-law while managing housework and my part-time job, I return to my usual routine. My husband was so naturally present and taciturn that I still don't feel any special changes. While thinking this, I prayed to my husband's portrait. Loneliness wells up inside me. My mother-in-law seems normal, but I think she must be sadder than I am. I talk to my husband in my memories as I look through an old album I pulled out of the closet. On days I go to my part-time job, I leave the care of my mother-in-law to a helper. It's only twice a week, but it helps with pocket money and gives me a break. It's more distracting to work than to stay at home all the time. After a long absence, I go to work as usual, finish shopping before it gets dark, and return home. It's only after I get home that I realize it. When I shop as usual, there's leftover food. My husband used to eat a lot. The joy of cooking is gone. Loneliness wells up inside me again. I'm home, I say as I return home, in a voice so quiet that my mother-in-law can't hear, so there's no reply. Just as I thought that, a cheerful woman's voice, out of tune, comes from inside the house. Welcome back. The helper should have locked up and left, so who could it be? Excuse me for intruding, big sister. Jenny? The one in the house was my sister-in-law, Jenny. She seems to have used a spare key to enter the house. Who gave her the spare key? This has never happened before, so I brace myself for an emergency, but it seems not. Because she's relaxing and watching TV. I feel uncomfortable at her presence. What is she doing, coming into someone's house uninvited? Why did you come here all of a sudden without contacting me? I'm not usually one to speak without thinking, but I couldn't hold back my emotions. And my question came out sounding sarcastic. My sister-in-law answers in a displeased tone. Do I need to contact you to return to my own home? I want to say that's obvious. But I hold my peace. No need to create more trouble. My sister-in-law, who is still barely in her 40s and 10 years younger than my husband, could be described as bright and sociable if you're being generous. But to me, she just seems sloppy and noisy. Perhaps because of her personality. She had a very poor relationship with my late father-in-law. When she left home after getting married, she slammed a letter of disownment on the table and never returned. Not even for my father-in-law's funeral 5 years ago. I don't understand what she disliked so much. However, I distinctly remember her suddenly showing up at my husband's funeral the other day, reuniting with old friends and relatives, and making a scene. I heard rumors that she's reckless with money and has debts her husband doesn't know about. I can see that. Big sister, where have you been? I was at my part-time job. Leaving mom alone at home? Locking her in a room by herself. Her face says it's unbelievable, and what a terrible way to phrase it. Lock her in? Of course not. I have a helper come during my part-time hours. She should have been here until just now. What's that? Paying a helper and going to work yourself? What's the point? Isn't it just easier to take care of mom yourself instead of going to work? Caught off guard by the unexpected comment, I struggle to respond. I've been balancing my part-time job and caring for my mother-in-law for years. After all, she's the one who left home with disdain in her youth. Noticing my displeased expression, my sister-in-law lets out an exaggerated sigh. I thought it must be hard for you since Big Brother is gone, and here you are going to work already. Kim, you're really cold-hearted. Leaving mom's care to someone else. You don't want to be at home that much? Huh? She looks at me with cold eyes, further accusing me as I become flustered. Big Brother would be sad to hear this. Abandoning your duties as a wife, that's terrible treatment. Why do I have to be told this? Anger starts to well up in me. I'm trying to accept the reality of living without my husband. Would she be satisfied if I just stayed at home and cried? Now that Big Brother is gone, I'm worried about leaving this house and Mom to you, the daughter-in-law. I tilt my head. Why do I have to be referred to as a daughter-in-law by her? Sure, my husband is gone, but I'm already living on a pension, and I have some savings. I won't have any financial troubles if I don't splurge. Plus, I've been taking care of my mother-in-law for 7 years now. Her words are outrageous. Hey, I came all this way, so hurry up and give it to me. Suddenly, she shows her palm. What? Not what? Give me my share. It's getting more and more confusing. Did I have anything to give to my sister-in-law? I'm your sister. Half of Big Brother's inheritance belongs to me, right? Half? My sister-in-law grins and waggles her palms. Is this extortion? You seem to be mistaken, but you don't have any inheritance rights. Huh? What do you mean? What do I mean? It would be strange if a sister had inheritance rights. Even though we're a childless couple, Mom is still healthy. So there's no way there would be inheritance for siblings. Is that so? But this house should become mine. Mom has her share of the inheritance, right? That's because Mom is still healthy. What are you talking about? She won't be healthy forever. When that time comes, it's my house, so you shouldn't interfere. Whether my sister-in-law understands or not is doubtful. But this house certainly won't become mine. It's solely in my mother-in-law's name. It never belonged to my late husband, so it won't become mine. Greedy as she is, my sister-in-law indeed has a closer right. When my father-in-law passed away, this sister-in-law renounced her inheritance. It was because they didn't get along well and, originally, because my father-in-law had some debts from his business. At that time, my sister-in-law had said, I won't inherit anything. I know about the debts from the business. You think just because I married into a wealthy family, I'll pay? No way. I'm married now, so I'm a stranger, don't involve me. When my father-in-law died, my husband also renounced the inheritance. So the house and debts were all taken over by my mother-in-law. The debts were not substantial. And later my husband managed to repay them on behalf of his mother. Anyway, with my husband's passing, there's no right of inheritance for my sister-in-law. As I patiently explain this, my sister-in-law grows increasingly displeased. Then, my mother-in-law called me from her room. Perhaps it was time for the restroom. I informed my sister-in-law and headed to my mother-in-law's room. After assisting with the restroom, we returned to the living room together. And by then, my sister-in-law had disappeared. Suddenly feeling something was off, I looked around the room and noticed that several of the antique vases that my mother-in-law had been collecting and treasuring for years were missing. Since when? I hadn't seen the scene, but I could only think that my sister-in-law took them. What in the world is going on? After ranting as much as she wanted and realizing she had no inheritance, did she steal my mother-in-law's collection as retaliation? I don't want to suspect her, but there's no one else. Kim? What's wrong? My mother-in-law noticed something was off and asked. I force a smile to avoid worrying her. Just now, Jenny was here. It seems she's worried about us, you and me. I wrapped my response in thick sugarcoating. But my mother-in-law seemed to see right through it. Oh, really? I wanted to see her. If she comes again, make sure to let me know. 5 days later. Once again, my sister-in-law arrived unannounced. And today, she brought movers with her, piling up loads of cardboard boxes in front of our house. Huh? Jenny? What are all these boxes? Unperturbed by my flustered voice, my sister-in-law directs the movers. Put the heavy stuff inside the entrance. Be quiet, there's an elderly person here. Wait a minute, I'm troubled if you do this kind of thing without permission. I stop the movers from entering the house and confront my sister-in-law. What are you thinking? You can see, can't you? I can't. Don't raise your voice. What if Mom hears? My sister-in-law looks at me sharply. If Mom hears, it's because she knows she's doing something wrong. Did you lock Mom in her room again today? Of course not. I wonder. More importantly, what is all this? My irritation grows, and my sister-in-law laughs through her nose. I told you before. I can't entrust the house and Mom to you, a daughter-in-law. Even so, this is clearly. That's right. As you guessed, I'm moving in. What about your own house? Then my sister-in-law drops a bombshell. I divorced and came back for you. What? It's only natural, considering the house. I don't understand what she's saying. She was supposed to have come to the funeral with her husband. When did you get divorced? Just last week. Why? Didn't I just tell you? For the house. I need to verify this step by step because I can't understand it all. So, you're going to live in this house? That's right, of course. Does that mean you'll take care of Mom? What are you talking about? That's your job, isn't it? Then, will you do the housework? Why would that be? Or will you earn in place of my husband? That's impossible. There's no reason for my sister-in-law to have divorced. Her husband was wealthy and kind. She had no complaints about him. My head spins. I need to calm down a bit. Living with my sister-in-law in this house is absolutely impossible. In fact, it's unthinkable. Where did you take Mom's collection of vases? When I asked as if I just remembered, Jenny answered without a hint of guilt. I sold them because I needed the money for moving. What? What's the big deal? It's my right to do whatever I want with things inside my own home, isn't it? Wah. I was speechless from her reasoning. Right, I should go call Mom. I was always told to do that whenever Jenny came to the house. But realizing this, Jenny stopped me. Wait a minute. What is it? I'll tell Mom myself, so just keep quiet. Huh? It's better if I explain things, being her daughter rather than you, her daughter-in-law. But if you understand, then help carry the boxes. Jenny directed me to my husband's study, which was still in the process of being cleaned out. Jenny, wait. I don't want you to put anything in this room. I objected, but Jenny didn't care at all. What? A daughter-in-law living in my family home dares to speak up? She continued to bring in the boxes without care. The sunlight is great in here, it's the best room. Jenny barged into my husband's room, causing me distress. Sure, it might be her family home. But it's also the precious home where I've lived for decades. There's no way I can just accept this without any contact or consultation. I'll say this first because it's important. Give me all the money. Huh? Money? Yes, all the money in this house. My already confused mind went into further panic. All of it? What are you talking about? Last time you were mistaken thinking half of it was yours, what now? Jenny laughed through her nose. I couldn't believe I had no share, but honestly, it doesn't matter. Regardless of my inheritance rights, now that I've returned, I'll manage the house and the money. So it's only natural I take it all. Don't act so high and mighty as a daughter-in-law when the sister, am here. What? Hearing Jenny's selfish arguments only made things more confusing for me. If you won't obey, then you can just leave. The moment I saw Jenny's grinning face, something tense since my husband's death snapped. I will not let this selfish woman take away my precious time and money. I responded calmly. I understand. I have no intention of obeying you. I will leave this house immediately. Seeing my resolute attitude, the smile disappeared from Jenny's face. What do you mean by that? What about Mom? Just as you said, Jenny, I'm only a daughter-in-law, so I won't interfere any further. Please take care of the rest. Huh? What a cruel person. It's rich coming from someone who has always neglected Mom. Who are you talking to like that? Apologize immediately. Ignoring her, I quickly packed my things. Then I went to the first floor where my mother-in-law's room was. Opened the door and announced loudly, Mom. I was told to leave, so I will do just that. My mother-in-law looked at me with a bewildered face. Please look after the house, Jenny. With that, I stormed out of the house. Jenny was shouting something, but I didn't look back. All she does is act selfishly without knowing anything. She'll regret this. A week later, there were 50 missed calls on my cell phone. I couldn't answer because I was in a meeting. Just as I was about to call back, another call came in. Hello? Big sister? No. Huh? It's you, big sister, isn't it? You have the wrong number. I don't have a sister. I don't need that kind of talk. Please, help me. Help? Me help you? Yes, we're family, aren't we? Help. Family? Who? Don't joke around. Jenny yelled angrily, and I responded calmly. You want help, right? What's with that attitude? Why would you say something like that? Behind Jenny's pained voice, I could hear Mom shouting. When you're done with the laundry, start cleaning. Hurry up. Hey. You heard that, right? What dementia? Isn't she more energetic than before? Oh, didn't you know, Jenny? Mom's dementia has gotten much better. What? Well, you wouldn't know, would you? You've been avoiding Mom for years. I'm not avoiding her. Several years ago, my mother-in-law had severe dementia that led to delusions, fits of anger, and messing up rooms, to the point where she would leave the house on her own and get lost. It was a tough time. Alone, I couldn't stop her. And it took both my husband and me to bring her back home. After that, she injured her leg and couldn't walk well, which added stress for everyone in the family. Ever since the helper suggested it, she's been playing online games daily. Online games? Yes. They seem to suit her, and her dementia has improved significantly. She's not just cooped up in her room, she's playing games. Before I knew it, she had returned to her old routine of living a regular life, which makes me happy. Games, really? I thought it was easy because she was quiet in her room. But she calls me incessantly, acts spoiled, lectures me, it's really tough. Really? That shouldn't be. Big sister, do you always take care of her like that? How rude. Who are you talking about? It seems my mother-in-law grabbed the phone. Kim? Thanks to you not relying on Jenny and arranging for a helper every day, I'm feeling great. I'm glad to hear that, I'm relieved. So, is everything taken care of? Yes, everything. I just finished a meeting. I'm available anytime, Mom. That's great, then let's get moving. I only took my handbag and returned home. The large bags I had when I left weren't necessary. When I arrived home, my mother-in-law greeted me. Welcome back, I was waiting. Jenny, standing beside her, looked completely exhausted, like a different person. It seemed my mother-in-law had been putting her to work, which isn't her usual behavior. Maybe she wanted to teach Jenny a lesson for selling her collections without permission. I'm tired. Take me to my room so I can rest. I took my mother-in-law to her room as instructed, and Jenny's attitude changed dramatically. Where have you been hiding? Think about the situation I've been left in. I have no home to return to, so you should help. I tilted my head. Isn't that her own doing? If I can't live here, I might as well be homeless in the park. Be grateful you have a house. My head tilted even more. So, what do you want to do? Think about it from a daughter-in-law's perspective. Housekeeping and caregiving are for daughters-in-law. Managing the money is for me, the family member. It's like an employment relationship, right? You're just a housekeeper for the family. I was too shocked to say anything. Jenny might have lost a screw somewhere. She had been a daughter-in-law herself until very recently. What was she talking about? Did Mom say anything about living together? When I asked this, Jenny said triumphantly, "She told me to take care of the house." I see. That figures. I responded nonchalantly, and Jenny looked puzzled. You're taking this very lightly? Were you prepared for this? Yes. Well, good. Since Mom said so, you understand, right? Hurry back and continue with the housekeeping and caregiving as usual. No. What? Just as Mom said, I'll leave the house to you, Jenny. Mainly, the cleaning up. What? What do you mean? We're moving tomorrow. Moving? Yes. I've been sorting documents and finalizing procedures up to today. If Jenny doesn't leave soon, it would be trespassing. I don't understand what you're saying at all. It seems Jenny couldn't grasp the situation, so I decided to make it clear. The house has already been sold. Huh? Why would you do something like that without permission? My brother would be sad. Yes, he would be sad. He was looking forward to moving. What do you mean? That brother also agreed to sell the house. What? We bought a condo for seniors. Mom is moving there with us. Moving to a condo? Of course, considering their future, a condo with better facilities for the elderly. And barrier-free design is more suitable than an old house with a cumbersome yard. It's better to live comfortably for the rest of their lives, right? That's what my husband said. So my mother-in-law and I agreed. We never imagined we would be gone. I wasn't informed. Huh? This is my family home. It's strange not to check with me. The owner of this house is Mom. We don't need permission from a mere squatter. Actually, that was a bit harsh. Jenny is still one of the presumptive heirs, so she is a stakeholder. But we thought it would be more trouble to involve her. Mom might have mild dementia. But my husband was entrusted with managing the assets through a family trust. And he sold the house. This house already belongs to someone else. Jenny trembled, her face growing paler. Don't joke. Where am I supposed to live now? I've already filed for divorce. Why don't you apologize to your husband and ask for his forgiveness? It's impossible, obviously. She just said whatever she wanted when she left. Said whatever she wanted, like what? Things like he's a loser, earns a low salary, and has a bad smell from aging. The more I hear, the sorrier I feel. How could she say such things to such a kind husband? Ha! Wait a minute. So, does this mean there is no money in this house right now? That's right, almost all of it went into buying the condo. She divorced counting on the money in this house. What is she going to do now? Huh? I couldn't hide my surprise. What on earth happened? Just a little debt and he complains, such a stingy man. Debt? I'm better off without him. Hearing these words from Jenny, I feel a sense of disgust. I had heard she was careless with money, but I couldn't believe she would abandon her family over it. All the cards and bank books were taken away. That man is worthless. I shudder. Jenny's values seem to be all about money. The little debt doesn't seem so little. Then, Jenny, having an epiphany, said, "Hey, let me live in that condo. It shouldn't be a problem if I live there instead of Big Brother, right?" Yes, that should work. Jenny seemed pleased with her brilliant idea. If she doesn't understand what she is saying, I'll explain it to her one by one. I am a housekeeper for the family. Is that what you said? Huh? No, just wanted to check. What? I start to speak slowly. The condo is in Mom's name, so if she says it's okay, I have nothing to say. But you want to live together in a house that is neither your family home nor anything else anymore? Huh? You also said to give you all the money. Can you say that again? Jenny's face freezes. Did I say that? You must have heard wrong. I continue with a smile. I think family should support each other. It's wrong if someone has to endure just to live. I absolutely refuse to live the rest of my life accommodating you. And I definitely won't let you use our money. Jenny seems too angry to find words to reply. She runs to Mom's room to seek help. Mom. This daughter-in-law is crazy. Mom firmly slaps Jenny's hand. My legs may be bad, but my ears are better than most. I heard everything. You've been rather high and mighty with Kim, haven't you? What? How can you say such things about another woman, about being a daughter-in-law? Unbelievable. Let me be clear. You've always been selfish, extravagant, and arrogant. There's no helping you. Mom? Aren't you going too far? I was relieved when you married a good man. But to think you'd divorce and come back, I'm truly disappointed. Disappointed? What are you saying, Mom? Don't you wish for your daughter's happiness? My mother-in-law sighed deeply and said with a sharp gaze, "Don't be so entitled." Huh? You might think it's normal because you've always been with him, but such a good man is rare. No one else would put up with a foolish woman like you. Mom, you've been saying too much. Go and apologize to your husband and ask to be taken back. That's your best chance for happiness. My happiness? That's right. You won't find such a good man again. If you lose him, you'll regret it. Lose him? Trust my mother-in-law to choose her words wisely, knowing Jenny's character well. Compared to a poor family home with only an old woman and a daughter-in-law, it's no contest. If you understand, go back quickly. Trust a mother's words. Somehow, they have a convincing power and force. I'll give her one more push. Jenny, it's better to apologize sooner rather than later. Is that so? I nod deeply. That's right. Mom also said forcefully. Obviously. Let's send her back before she changes her mind. Mom and I exchanged a glance and nodded quietly. Come on, hurry. If you talk properly, your husband will understand. We'll send back your things, so don't worry. But, will he forgive me? Jenny seems a bit hesitant. My mother-in-law's expression turned stern. Nonsense. Mom pulled out a piece of paper. Write down your sincerity on paper. Write that you will not waste money. That you will change your heart, and that you will not return to your parents' home again. Why? It's for your own good. I will show this to your husband and explain things properly for you. In return, you must make up with your husband. You cannot come back to our place ever again. I understand. Thank you, Mom. Mom became a bit terrifying. She skillfully used both carrot and stick, manipulating the situation to her advantage and even securing evidence. This ensures Jenny cannot rely on our house anymore. She's formidable indeed. By the way, it seems she is undefeated in online gaming competitions too. Jenny obediently leaves. Mom looks relieved. No matter that she's my daughter, I can't take care of her anymore, and I don't even want to. You are my only daughter now. Let's continue to get along well. My mother-in-law chuckles shyly. Of course, Mom. Let's spend our time peacefully together. Afterward, Jenny quickly returned home and apologized to her husband, asking for a reconciliation. I was blinded by my brother's inheritance and filed for divorce. It was madness. Please forgive me. She did well to apologize honestly, but during her absence, it turned out she had made other debts and had an affair, and gentle as her husband was, he couldn't forgive her. Then, for some reason, Jenny blamed me, saying, my sister-in-law instigated me. I was brainwashed. There's absolutely no reason for me to have instigated Jenny. How does one even brainwash someone? Her husband, deeply disappointed by Jenny's consistent dishonesty, expected Mom to cover for her, but given Mom's inability to lie, she ended up explaining everything, even things that didn't need to be said. It seems a reconciliation is off the table until Jenny repays her debts and truly changes her ways. What? I'm lowering my head here. With that attitude, it seems impossible she will change anytime soon. My mother-in-law and I have successfully moved and are enjoying our daily lives. The room that was supposed to be my husband's study has been turned into a small personal gym. It's not fancy, but being able to exercise daily at home is a blessing. Gaming is good, but if you don't exercise, you'll get out of shape, Mother. What are you talking about? There are online games now that let you move and play. Really? As expected, you're well informed. You have to use both your brain and body in balance. I feel like my mother-in-law is getting younger. Could it be just me? Given her likely long life, I can't afford to fall behind. I think about what will happen when my mother-in-law passes away. Then, the condo will belong to Jenny. She probably can't wait for that day. My mother-in-law mentioned making me her adopted daughter to enable me to inherit. But I hate the idea of a legal battle with Jenny. If that day comes, I plan to use my husband's inheritance and savings to move into a nursing home. However, judging by my mother-in-law's condition, that day won't come anytime soon. Ironically, my husband's sudden passing made me reassess my life ahead. What I need to cherish now are the inheritance my husband left, the savings we accumulated, and above all, a healthy body that can work indefinitely. A life dependent on someone else's money, like Jenny's, is too uncertain. If your mind and body are healthy, most things should go well. I resolved to live responsibly for my aging self. Next to me, my mother-in-law breaks a good sweat while doing strength training. Mother, I'll join you. I might feel bad for my husband waiting in heaven, but we plan to live much longer. My name is Sandra Johnson. In my younger days, I wanted to become an actress and even joined a theater group. I seemed to have some talent, but realizing certain things with my ex-husband, Matt, dramatically changed my life plans. My ex-husband demanded that I give up my acting career. Faced with choosing between marriage and my dream, I grabbed the apparent dream of a woman. That was marriage in front of me. However, soon after getting married, the children I expected would not come no matter how long I waited. It wasn't until the 10th year that I finally became pregnant. Overjoyed, I couldn't hide my happiness and bought a cake to celebrate once Matt returned home. However, who could have imagined that what was supposed to be the best night would turn into the worst? Matt came home tired and showed me a divorce paper with his name, Matt Ford, written on it. What's this? I want a divorce. I can't continue to live with you anymore. Despite finally getting pregnant at 41, all my joy was blown away. And all I could see was the sad reality. Why all of a sudden? It's not sudden. I've been thinking about this for a long time. Why? Just divorce me. No matter how much I asked for the reason, Matt would not disclose it. I'm sorry. Those were Matt's last words to me. In the end, I became single without even telling him about the pregnancy. But having my child with me might have been what allowed me to endure. 5 years later, without remarrying, as a single mother, I found immense joy in having a child. The child was a girl, and her smile was angelic. Sarah. Thank you for being born. Mommy is so happy because you are here. Every day is a struggle, but I never thought being a mother could be this joyful. Then, one day, I encountered someone I wished not to see. It was Matt, my ex-husband from 5 years ago. I didn't recognize him until he spoke because he looked so different. Hey, long time no see. Huh? What's that, huh? It's me. Your former husband, Matt. His appearance had changed drastically from the serious company employee he once was to something akin to a punk. Matt. Really? You've changed a lot. So what? Like I've gotten younger, huh? Yeah, maybe. It seemed more like he'd gotten foolish rather than younger. Why? Next to Matt was a young woman clinging to his arm. She seemed to be in her late 20s, while Matt was supposed to be 45, like me. This meant she was over 20 years younger than him. The woman laughed mockingly and asked, "Who is this?" "Oh, this is my ex-wife. You know, the one from that time." "I see, from that time." "Wait, you mean you had another wife at that time?" "No, that's not it. We divorced 5 years ago. I was with this woman then." "I never told you that though." "So, the reason for our divorce was because you were cheating?" "It's not cheating if I'm crazy about her." "Really?" It was dizzying, but seeing such a broken man before me made me realize that the divorce was not a mistake. "Is she your wife?" "Nah, we're not married yet. But if this continues, we'll get married." "Well, congratulations then." "Thanks. Being with a younger wife, kids come quicker, right?" "I couldn't have kids with you, but now I'll finally be a dad. Well, that's great. Are you married? No, I'm not. I thought so, still single, huh? Well, it can't be helped. You were 41 when we split up, after all. Men can remarry at this age, but it's not the same for women. Looks do matter, don't they? Do they? I don't think marriage is everything. You say that because you can't have kids. Watching Matt, he seemed desperate to keep up with his younger partner. It was clearly a strain for him. Since you can't have kids, it's better not to marry, right? It's a scam if you marry and can't have kids. I do have a child. What? You had a kid without being married? It costs money to raise a kid. Must be ugly and stupid, especially one from an old mother. That's not true. Well, you wouldn't say otherwise. Wait, you didn't get pregnant when you were with me, but you did with another man? That's not it. The child is yours too. What do you mean? On the day we got divorced, I went to the hospital and found out I was pregnant. I was looking forward to telling you, but we ended up discussing divorce. So I never got the chance to tell you before we parted. What? It means she's half yours. You're kidding. It's true. But don't worry, I'm not asking you to recognize her now. Oh, okay. At that moment, a little girl was led by a woman's hand towards us. Mommy, it's over. Huh? Mom? Yes. That means, your child. Yes, my child. What's her name? Sarah. Sarah then walked up to me and greeted him. Nice to meet you, I'm Sarah. How old are you? I'm 4 years old. Then, the woman who had been clinging to Matt suddenly lit up and reached out for a handshake with Sarah. Sarah Johnson. Yes, I'm Sarah. Can I shake your hand? Mommy? Go ahead and shake her hand. Okay, here you go. Sarah extended her small hand. Wow, so cute. The real deal, really. What are you talking about? Of course, she's real. She's alive, isn't she? Not just that. She's the real Sarah Johnson. I'm so thrilled. What do you mean? Why are you shaking hands? Oh, Matt. Don't you see? This child. I don't get it. She's just a little girl. No, you don't understand. She's Sarah Johnson, the child prodigy actress. What? Indeed, my daughter Sarah is currently causing a huge buzz as a genius child actress. She's busy every day, being called to various studios, filming locations, and even shopping malls, like today. I've watched all the dramas and movies she's in. Truly an angel. Thank you. Oh, so cute. I'm a big fan of you, Sarah. I've collected all your merchandise. Getting the plushie you collaborated with Pooh was tough, but I managed. Matt's girlfriend seemed genuinely fond of Sarah, discussing Sarah-related merchandise in detail. Well, who would have thought your girlfriend would be a fan of Sarah? Strange things do happen. Is she really that famous? She's so young. Super famous. It's crazy not to know Sarah nowadays. Even if you say so, it's just a child acting. She's not just any child actress. Despite being so young and small, her acting is excellent, with a cute smile. She's called a once-in-a-century talent. Wow, is she really that amazing? She's more than amazing. Now, any drama you watch, if there's a child role, she's the top choice. Shining brighter than any other child actor. There's talk she might become a major actress in the future. She seemed genuinely happy and enthusiastic about talking about Sarah, while Matt wore a meaningful smile. I see, so she's making quite a bit of money. Yeah, she's a cash cow, huh? With her alone, you could probably buy a castle. That's not true. She's just a little girl. There are limits to how much she can work. Yeah, right. Working too much would mean no playtime for Sarah. Huh, my child's a genius actress? Wonder who she takes after. Me, of course. I wanted to be an actress before marrying you. I even passed some auditions. Yeah, I remember you saying something about wanting to be an actress. Yes, and I was told to choose between marriage and acting, and I chose marriage. If I hadn't given up acting back then, I sometimes wonder what life would be like now. Makes me want to go back to the past. But it was because you gave up that Sarah was born. That's true, since she was born between you and me. I never imagined that the child born after our divorce would fulfill my dream. Thinking about what kind of actress she'll become excites me. I hope she becomes a world-famous actress, but that's up to Sarah. Why? She's just a child. It should be about what the parents want. It won't work like that. Sarah will grow up, and she should be the one to decide what she wants to do. And who is that person over there? That's Sarah's manager, Angela. Sarah is very attached to her, which helps a lot. Manager Angela smiled in greeting, but Matt did not respond. She even has a manager? Yes, of course. With her popularity, it makes sense to have one. And, what were you doing just now? We were recording a radio program. Here? It was supposed to be a live broadcast. A job for such a small child. So she'll be earning for decades, huh? Amazing. But why did you even get her into showbiz? It wasn't so much putting her into it. When we were out shopping, she was scouted. I thought we might as well give it a try, and before we knew it, this happened. Huh, that's something. Excuse me, but we need to be moving on soon. At that moment, Angela spoke up. Huh, you're leaving? Yes, we have another location waiting. I see, Sarah is really a big star. Hey, wait a minute. You said this child is half made by me. Made by you, well, yes, your genes are certainly a part of her. She was conceived before we divorced. That means I have parental rights since she's half mine. Well, more than rights, you certainly have responsibilities. I see. Matt smirked and told Sarah, I'm your dad, but Sarah just tilted her head, puzzled. I don't understand. Of course, she wouldn't understand. Suddenly being told I'm your dad wouldn't make sense to a 4-year-old Sarah. But Matt was desperately trying to make her understand that he was her father. I'm your dad. We haven't met in a long time. So you might not understand, but you are made from my genes. However, the more desperate Matt became, the more frightened Sarah got, hiding behind her manager. Why didn't you properly tell her about me? What? Being told all of a sudden like this. Now that I'm not around, you'd hang up a picture or talk about me daily, wouldn't you? We're divorced, why would I hang up your picture? I don't have any lingering feelings for you. It's not about lingering feelings. Well, I never planned to meet you again. It just happened today, so I wouldn't teach her something that would confuse her. Even so, you should have at least told her she has a father. Other kids have dads, so she should know she has one too. Don't be so selfish. You chose someone else over me and left. If we hadn't met here, I wouldn't have told her until she was an adult. You should have told her. Then she would have understood immediately when I said I'm her dad. How can you half-heartedly claim she's half mine? Suddenly, Matt began to argue forcefully. At that moment, Sarah pushed Matt. With all her little strength, she said, "Don't bully Mommy." Of course. Such a little force wouldn't do much. It could easily be brushed aside. What, Sarah? Are you defying Daddy? I'm not bullying Mommy. I'm just correcting her because she's wrong. Don't bully Mommy. That's not cute. How rude. She's incredibly cute. Just because things aren't going your way doesn't mean you should say weird things. Even though she's my child, why do I have to be told these things? If we're blood related, she should understand we're family. Being blood related doesn't instantly make you family. It takes time to build a parent-child relationship. If she were to follow someone she just met because he said I'm your dad, that would actually be worrying. Exactly. How can you say Sarah isn't cute? She's desperately trying to protect her mom. Any other child wouldn't do that. She's so cute it's unbelievable. Hey, even you say such a thing. I'm a fan of Sarah. I'm saying this because you're disrespecting my favorite. Hey, Katie, wait. We have something important to discuss now. There's no time for that. We just met here. There's no important discussion to have. Well, I'll get straight to the point then. Since she's my child, half of the money she earns should be mine. So give me half of her earnings. What? What? Isn't it obvious? If it weren't for my genes, this child wouldn't have been born. So, as a producer, I have a right to receive it. What are you talking about? It's too sudden, I'm shocked. Basically, her income is her own. We've decided it's for her use. You're planning to keep all her earnings to yourself, aren't you? I'm not thinking that. How would I know? Anyway, I have a right to receive it. Matt kept insisting on getting half of Sarah's income. However, the money Sarah earned should be used for her benefit, not for Matt, who she had just met, to spend as he pleases. Stop it. You're scaring Sarah. So what if she's scared? It's no big deal if a child gets scared. What are you talking about? You should just earn your own money. It's not about the amount. Imagine what would happen if I received half of Sarah's earnings. We could live just having fun. Matt. What are you saying? You claim to be a father, yet all you're doing is trying to take a small child's money. Stop this nonsense. It's embarrassing. What's embarrassing about it? You said it yourself, she's a cash cow. I did say that, but don't scare Sarah like that. Shut up, be quiet. Suddenly, Matt yelled, and Sarah started crying in surprise. Oh, she's crying. Sorry, Sarah, poor thing. Matt, you're really the worst. Making such a small child cry. You say you're a father, but you don't think about the child at all. If you really claim to be a father, think about the child's feelings. Now is not the time to consider the child's feelings. Our future depends on it. What kind of person are you? I don't care anymore. Saying that, Matt's girlfriend ran away from the spot, and Matt chased after her. A week later, a call came from Matt. Seeing the name Matt displayed for the first time in 5 years, I regretted not having blocked him. Thanks for the other day. Have you made up with your girlfriend? Who would have thought that your girlfriend was a fan of Sarah? It's a small world. I don't care about that woman. You said you were going to marry her. I changed my mind. So, we broke up. That's quite a sudden development. You said that once you got married, you would have a baby and become a dad. Yeah, after that I said I was the father, so I should get the money. And she told me not to say stupid things and left. She's really stubborn. That's too bad. I don't care about her. I have Sarah. From now on, I want to be by her side as her father. There's no need for that. She has me. You're not enough. You don't understand many things. I can protect her. She's been fine without knowing you for 4 years. Suddenly being told I'm your dad will just confuse her. She'll get used to it eventually. Anyway, you're not enough, so I'll educate her. We'll live together from now on, so give me your address. What? What are you talking about? We're divorced, and we're strangers now. Why would you think we can live together? That doesn't matter. Even if you're a stranger to me, I am her father. There's no way we can live together. Then give me the child. Don't be ridiculous. She's not an object to be given away. You've been raising her for 4 years. Now it's my turn. I refuse. She is my child. Matt kept saying various things, but I kept denying and refusing. And perhaps out of irritation, he suddenly hung up the phone. I thought that would make him give up, but it didn't. And he continued to show up around Sarah, trying to plant in her mind that he was her dad. Unable to take it anymore, I contacted him and told him to stop. Stop it. What now? Why do you appear in front of Sarah? That's because I'm her father. Wanting to see my own daughter is natural, right? Even as her mother, you don't have the right to interfere. We just met for the first time recently, and being told you're her father is troubling. The only one troubled is you, Sarah isn't. It's affecting her work. Why would it affect her? Because she gets scared and can't act when she sees you. That can't be true. It is true. We've been divorced for 4 years. Being suddenly told I'm your dad is bound to be confusing. I shouldn't have introduced you at all. She'll understand eventually. She's famous, after all. Anyway, Sarah is my child, so whatever I do with her is my business. Wait a minute. What exactly are you planning to do? I don't know. I'm not planning anything. You better not be thinking of her as a money tree. Maybe. Well, one thing I can say is that I won't let you have her all to yourself. I'm not monopolizing her. No parent would turn their child's talents into money. Unfortunately, I'm right here. Since Sarah has a talent that makes money, there's no reason not to use it. It means more money for her and more fame. If you think of doing something stupid, I'll call the police. Go ahead if you can. Hey, wait. Matt. Matt left a cryptic message before hanging up the phone. Staring at the disconnected phone, I sensed storm clouds gathering. Matt was probably plotting something terrible. If my suspicions were correct, there was no telling what he might do. Anxiety fueled more anxiety, and feeling this couldn't continue. I tried calling Matt again, but he never answered. A few days later, while I had entrusted Sarah to Angela due to my own commitments, and was doing something else, Matt seized the opportunity to take Sarah away. Mrs. Johnson, what should we do? Angela, what happened? It's Sarah. Sarah has been taken away by her dad. By Matt? I'm sorry, I just took my eyes off her for a moment, and he took her from the car. I've already contacted the police, and I thought I should let you know immediately. Where are you right now? I'm coming there right away. At the parking lot in front of the TV station. Understood. I jumped into my car immediately, my heart pounding and my hands sweating. Sarah must be crying and feeling terrified by now. Considering how much Matt had changed, there was no telling what he might do. Yet, if he really saw her as a money tree, perhaps he wouldn't physically harm her. However, even if there were no visible scars, emotional scars would be just as damaging. All I could do was drive and pray for her safety. When I arrived at the designated parking lot, I saw Angela's familiar car parked. Angela. Where is Sarah? I'm sorry. There's been no contact from the police yet. They've issued an emergency alert for a kidnapping. Oh no. What a mess. Stay strong. Everything will be okay. Sarah, please, God, keep Sarah safe. The situation left me with no choice but to keep praying. However, the resolution came unexpectedly quickly. Thanks in part to my call for information on social media, which mobilized many fans. Among them was Matt's girlfriend, who posted what car they were in and even his photo. Thanks to this, information spread rapidly on social media. And the police quickly knew Matt's whereabouts. The vigilant social media police swiftly took action. And Sarah was soon safely back in my arms. Afterward, Matt was arrested for abducting a minor. Thinking he might actually end up in prison, Matt hired a lawyer. This led to an offer for a settlement. Given Sarah's fame, our lawyer advised that it might be best to agree to a settlement. Reluctantly, I accepted. Following a directive from the agency that consistently supported us. Worried that imprisoning her biological father might hurt Sarah's popularity. However, Matt then filed for a change of custody, aiming to regain parental rights. However, given the stable life Sarah had with me and his evident financial motivation, his request was denied. Unwilling to let it go, I then decided to pursue child support through a lawyer, challenging his refusal to pay given his complaints about our financial well-being. Threatened with legal action, he eventually paid in one lump sum. But the story didn't end there. Matt's foolish actions caused an uproar online, quickly attracting attention from Sarah's fans. Further internet sleuthing led to his identity being fully exposed, turning into a media circus when people realized he was the kidnapper. His employer, facing corporate damage, fired him. Now, with no income, Matt was confined to a dark room, unable to even step outside. Meanwhile, thanks to the online commotion, Sarah's fanbase grew, protecting her with their support, and her smile continues to brighten the world today.